So I've been using the MacBook Pro 2015 edition for quite some while now. I bought it in 2015 or 16. So I got it pretty new when it came out. Now this is the base model, 126 gigs of SSD. I believe 8 gigs of RAM. And this computer did me very well for the period that I've had it. So lots to love about this computer, but at this time and point, I'm reaching the ceiling on what I can do with this laptop. So I am now in the market looking for a new computer. And like most of you, you probably go on YouTube to try finding reviews and seeing what some other people are saying about the device. But here's the problem. Most YouTube videos, while they're good, you have to take into consideration that a lot of these people they do this for a living, so it's very easy for them to acquire these devices, even though they make good recommendations. But I'm coming at it with a different perspective of someone who, I'm a Joe Blow just like you. We're Joe Blows. We don't do this for a living. We're looking for a reliable computer that can last us a while and is worth the value. We want good specs, but still at a good price. Now, you might wonder why I will be using a MacBook then, considering MacBooks are notoriously expensive. Well, let me explain. So, to get to where I'm at today, we kind of need to back up and think of how I got here in the first place. It all started when I was 5 years old. I'm kidding. Now, my first laptop I had was a Windows laptop. I used that through, high school. It wasn't necessarily mine, it was passed down from my sister, and it was buggy. It had a lot of issues, but it was my first laptop. I really didn't know I had no demands from it. I was browsing, I was, watching a few videos here and there. Wasn't doing anything demanding with it. So it is what it is. I didn't think much about it. Now going into college, I needed a new laptop, so luckily I actually got a scholarship and I was able to get a MacBook. Now this was my first introduction into the Apple ecosystem. The laptop was free. It was the 2008, I believe, 2009, and it was the unibody design. So this is pretty sweet. I had this laptop from the moment I turned it on. It worked perfectly. I was able to do all my work, and I started doing a little bit more demanding task on there. Moving forward towards my senior year, so this is about 4 years of use, it started slowing down on me. Now this model had a hard disk drive, and I was looking online. People were saying that this is common with hard disk drives. SSDs are the way to go. The RAM was also limited, so that also played a role. I really didn't know much about computers at this point, so I was just like, okay, I'll keep using this, and it just got to the point where I kept getting that spinning wheel of death. And I got so frustrated, I said, okay, I'm done with this. So I sold it. I was without a computer for a while, and then Black Friday came around, and then I got the HP Envy. This is a 15-inch laptop. So I got that. It had 8 gigs of RAM, I believe 512 hard disk drive. But regardless, it had a higher RAM. Now I loved this computer. It had a fingerprint scanner as well, which was pretty sweet. A nice way of unlocking it. This was in maybe 2012. So I used this laptop for about 3 years, and great laptop. It worked smooth. I started getting into photography at this point around 2012. So I was doing some I was doing some photo edits. So I liked that this computer was able to at least manage what I was throwing at it. It did me well, no issues there, no hiccups. And to my fault, I did break this laptop. I sat down on it, or I think I dropped it, and the screen broke. I used it for a while. I just plugged it through the HDMI to my TV, and that became kind of a desktop for me. And I used it for a while, and then I got into graduate school. So at this point, I needed something that was mobile. I needed a laptop. I couldn't, lug around my TV with me. So I went on the search again for a new laptop that I could get. And looking around, did my research. I decided I've been using the Windows plus MacBooks were just way too expensive for what you can get the equivalent on a Windows device. So I went to Best Buy, got an open box deal on the Lenovo Yoga. i7, I believe 16 gigs of RAM, touchscreen, nice, sleek device. I was like, all right, this is pretty cool. And I think I got it for under 900 or under 1,000, something like that. Now, the problem with this device, it looks good on paper, all the specs were good. And maybe this is why it was returned. It was buggy. I kept getting notifications. There were accidental touches, not even accidental, ghost touch, maybe that's what it's called. I'll just be typing on my computer and different applications start opening from the touchscreen. So I had to disable it. And even then, there were still a few issues there that pretty much made this computer unusable. So I returned it. Still looking, so I get a Dell. Dells are reliable, so I thought. So I get the Dell laptop, Latitude. I believe it was the Latitude series. Once again, I'm still taking into consideration budget, trying to stay under $1,000 and still get respectable specs. Now, this laptop also gave me issues. Oh, man. So many issues. I don't fully recall all of them, but at times applications would crash. I believe it was due to the hardware, not necessarily Windows. And you're also thinking, well, if you're having all these issues, why didn't you just go back to the HP, which you loved? Well, the problem is at this point of time, HP had transformed into, you know, now you're just somebody that I used to know. It was not the device that I knew before. It was not the company. Now they're making these products that are, they look nice. They're very sleek. But I'm seeing a lot of reviews saying that, well, for what you're getting, maybe it's not the best. It's pretty much a mediocre internals packed into a pretty package and then overpriced. They were pretty expensive. If they were in that price range with similar specs, I would have gotten the HP. But overall, I just decided, well, screw it. I'm just going to go back to my MacBook because up until it slowed down, my MacBook was doing me pretty well. So I go on Craigslist, I'm looking, and I find a brand new one. So I get one off of Craigslist. It's the base model, and that's the one I showed you. That's this laptop right here. So I've had this laptop, and I was hesitant not only because of the price, but because of the ports. At this time, there were only two USB A ports, but it did have the HDMI SD card slot. So I said, okay, whatever, that's fine. So I pulled the trigger, got that laptop. From day one when I turned that laptop on, it's been running similar to what I have today. And that's one of the beauties of MacBooks. It just works. I know they say that in their commercials, but it just works. Uh, Now you're talking, now even with all that praise, right? Now I'm thinking about upgrading once again because I've reached the capacity of this laptop. What I'm doing with my workflow requires more processing power, GPU, and all of that stuff. And this computer just can't provide that anymore. I'm spending way too much time editing videos, more than I need to. So I'm looking for a different device. So this is maybe like 2 years ago that I started looking for a new device, and everyone started raving about the Dell XPS. That was the new kid on the block. It's been around, but everyone seemed to really give it high praise. This was the Windows laptop to have pretty much. So I decided to get the 15-inch, uh, pretty specced out well, 16 or maybe 32 gigs of RAM, pretty sizable SSD as well. Everything on paper looks good. Great reviews. I get this laptop and it's just a headache from the day I first get it. Now maybe it's just me being rusty from not being in Windows for so long, but it just made me miss my Mac because I really didn't have to tweak anything. Mind you, I'm just a Joe Blow. I don't really have a lot of tech savviness in terms of going into the OS and modifying. I know what I need to do in terms of specific programs, like for my editing program, but in terms of manipulating the device, what a RTX is, what a AMD versus whatever. All I know is if it has a graphics card, higher RAM. I know those are pretty good. So with this computer, there was a lot to configure, and it didn't work as smoothly as I wished. And also, one of the biggest issues was the screen. The screen had it was pretty blue, and I was looking for ways to calibrate it, and it was just getting way too complicated. And I was reading online, I saw some people saying similar complaints about the screen. So eventually, I returned this because, I mean, I edit photos, like that's the majority of what I do. So I needed a computer that has a good screen and is color accurate. So I returned it, went back to old reliable, and that's what I've been using. Now, going forward, new MacBooks had come out. And if you're thinking, well, why not just get the new MacBooks? Well, the issue with those new MacBooks was they had a lot of issues with, for one, the keyboard. I love a good keyboard. I can't do with a bad keyboard. And there was so much complaints around that keyboard that I just said I can't use that laptop. It's not going to be usable. I'll just have to wait and mix and see what happens and make do with what I have. The keyboard was bad. It was still pricey, and the worst of all, they removed all the ports except USB-C. Like, what am I supposed to do with that? At least leave a SD card, point in case. You can see on my computer, I have this on here. I keep my dongle for a wireless mouse. Um, the HDMI is nice to have. I do use that. Like, why? I just didn't get it. Like, why remove those ports? What is the benefit of that? So, of principle, because you got to stand for something. Stand for something or fall for anything, I think is the phrase. You have to have principles. And of principle, I was not going to support a device that took away such consumer friendly ports. People who use the MacBooks edit. Like, come on, leave the SD card slot. Something at least. But that's what we had. At this point, the whole playing field was just not up to my liking. I started considering maybe doing a desktop setup, even considered the iPad Pro. But altogether, I just decided to wait because there was rumors starting to come out at this time that Apple will be changing the keyboard mechanism. So I waited, and I waited, and then eventually the 16-inch MacBook Pro came along. 16-inch MacBook Pro brought with a new keyboard. There was also the issues with the thermals on the previous model, on the 15-inch. With the i9, even the i7, it just did not manage the thermals well. Well, with this new 16-inch model, they solved a whole lot of those issues and still keeping it in the same similar frame. They increased the battery capacity. The processing power is improved. From what people are saying, the AMD processors that they have on there, GPUs, are much better than the previous ones. So there was just so much positive around this new 16-inch MacBook Pro. And that brings me to today. So navigating all of that and kind of my experience that I've had with different laptop systems, this is why I'm going back and finally choosing to go to the 16-inch MacBook Pro. Now, like I mentioned, the MacBooks have been very reliable for me. They've had no issues for me whenever I've used them. Now, my first MacBook did slow down, but I'm going to say that's probably due to more of the components that were inside and it being just a low power device. It's not unusual that you see people using their MacBooks for years, many years. And with mine, honestly, if I had the 15-inch with much more processing power, I'm pretty sure I wouldn't be having this discussion at all. It wouldn't be a discussion because it will be plenty powerful enough. It has all the ports. And it will just make sense to just keep using that. And I'll probably use it for 5 more years and be fine. But this computer, I've reached this limit, so now I am moving on to a new device, which will be the MacBook. And to go back and get the old 15-inch, similar to my buddy style, I mean, theoretically, it has everything that I kind of want, but with the new processing power of these new devices, it's just so much upside and future proof compared to that device. If I spend the X amount of dollars, I think they go still pretty high, even though they're older. If I spend that amount of money, yes, I get, all of those nice little components that I wanted with the ports and all of that. But still going forward, it's not as future proof. I might run into an issue, kind of like how I'm running into an issue with my laptop right now. And the fear there is that I might reach its, what I'm doing might, surpass what that computer is able to do. Well, with these new 16-inch MacBooks, I really don't see myself surpassing its capacity. I think it will be a really great laptop to cover everything that I do, editing videos, some photos, whatever I decide to do in the future. I'm pretty sure it will be able to handle it. I'm not going too crazy, but in what I do, but I think in the future it will be able to handle it. So that's what I'm gonna go with. So if you're just a Joe Blow like me, I hope this was helpful. I'm actually looking to get this laptop for my personal use. It's not going to be just getting it for a review. So I put a lot of thought process to it. That's why this video is so long, because like most of you guys, you probably have your different experiences that you're pulling from to try deciding, if you should get a device or not. I hope this helps once again. All right, I'll stop talking.